Recording. Yes, good recording. Okay, no mischief. No mischief with the recording. It is absolutely going to be 100% done. Okay, so welcome. My name is Michael Hayden. My full name is Michael Hayden Bennett, but we're going to learn today why the Bennett's not used anymore. And we're going to learn a little bit more about what we really have as our born name versus our birth certificate name. I am very honored to introduce to you actually one of the products or one of the talks underneath the Pure for Planet Global Mission private membership, this is a couple talks you can come to before we actually ask you to become a private member. But this is one of our new ecclesiastic associations called the Sacred Trust of Remembrance Sanctuary. Now, the purpose of this sanctuary is it's a school for the covenant of grace, protected by divine order, structures as a foundation for the soul's continuity. That's a lot to say. What it really means is our mission and our focus is to help you remember that you're a divine trustee, that you have a direct relationship to the Creator. Nobody can change that. Nobody can separate that. Nobody can put a tort in front of that. No monarch or no magistrate can tell you that you don't have that direct connection. A structure's been built around you for years and years and years and generations and eons, probably for many, many eons, long before we first discovered it, that has suppressed you and enslaved you in ways that's kind of hard to describe until you actually understand the idea that science and religion shape the way that you think, the way that you perceive, the way that you act, the way that you react, and maybe the way that you defend. So at this point, what we want to do is get back to something called the Sacred Trust of Remembrance, which is remembering that divine blueprint that's inside of you, that is who we are, that is inside of us, and then a structure that really was about honoring that system rather than the law system, the land and water system. And so it's my great pleasure to bring one of the trustees, one of the founding members of Sacred Trust Remembrance Sanctuary. He very much informed me yesterday, we're not trustees, we're not priests and priesthoods, although we are. He said, Michael, we're founders. And I'm like, yes, we're founders. Okay. He says, you're not a founder, I'm not a founder, we're founders. And I'm like, oh, he goes, we don't have to have a hierarchy. I said, okay, kind of like a bit like a tribal council. So we're going to be teaching a lot of different things. The first thing we're going to talk about is the difference between what we consider a trust and what a sacred natural law trust is, and how a private trust is a part of the legal system. And we're going to explain the difference of that. I've got a whole host of questions from my colleague here to address, and then might be some room for questions at the end, but I've put some of those questions in from previous talks. So we may not be calling for Q&A because I've already embedded into the discussion. So let me go ahead and make him co-host. So he has no difficulty coming on. And at some point in time, Darren, I'm going to ask you to unmute so you can talk. Give me just a second here. All right. I'm just going to make him co-host here. I'm looking for there we go, co-host. Okay. Okay, so Darren Paul, if you'd like to come out now and introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll start explaining what is a sacred divine natural law trust. Darren hails from the island of the United Kingdom. All yours, Darren. You're going to have to unmute again. I know you're playing with your phone.
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes, you are. Yes, you are, sir.
Yeah. Well, it did say I was unmuted, but it wasn't. Anyway, greetings, everybody.
Hello.
I believe everybody's muted themselves, aren't they? Yeah.
I'll mute them as they come on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So first thing first, I mean, what I would say is when you mentioned about questions there, Michael, anybody wants to chip in with a question, it's always easier, more interactive if people ask questions, because there's no such thing as a daft question. So if anybody wants to do that, I'm quite happy for that to happen. So ask as many questions as you want. during this session. So I missed the last bit, Michael, where you was introducing me. So what is it, the first thing you want me to go through?
First of all, you've got a script in front of you. So you see that in your WhatsApp?
Oh, well done. No,
Yes.
because it won't do that at the same time. But let me just pull it up. Right.
If you don't, I can quickly email it to you.
I've got it now. So
okay,
so
we're going to start with the intention of this is to define what is a sacred divine and natural law trust. So what is it?
Well, I mean, the best place to start, when you say what is a sacred divine natural law trust, what you're really talking about there is jurisdiction, because a trust is a trust. So if we start with the word trust, first of all, a trust is something that people use to create legacy or protect assets. Okay, they've been around a long time, probably far longer than we can ever remember, really, because it could probably go back hundreds of thousands of years. But when you ask the question, what is a sacred divine natural law trust? Then obviously we have this word law, don't we? And that law, that name law or that word law is often misunderstood, because you can have LORE, which is natural law, because it was spoken orally and passed down from generation to generation. But you can have LAW, which was codified law, which was written and expressed in writing. And then you've got the legal system, which is legal codes, acts and statutes, commercial codes, which tries to mimic law, but isn't law. Okay, so when you say what is a natural law trust, a natural LORE trust is a jurisdiction from equity, pure equity. Whereas a normal law trust, LAW, would be statutory and not under equity. So the difference is that if I'm operating in equity, I'm operating with a conscience, I'm breathing, I'm a man or a woman, and so I have to apply my conscience to that so that I am responsible for what I operate and do. But if I'm operating in law, LAW, then I've not got a conscience. I'm a creation of statute, a creation of the commercial system. And so as a result of that, I don't have to apply my conscience. I apply the law of statute, the commercial law. So I don't have to have a conscience. I can only operate in equity if I have a conscience.
And Darren, if I'm an average person, I'm an average Australian, an average German, I'm an average bloke, why would that matter to me?
Well, it may not matter to you, Michael, because if you don't understand who you truly are, then it wouldn't matter to you, because you'll just traverse this plane of earth and not have any accountability for what you did. But if you believe that you have got accountability for what you do, you don't cause any harm, loss, or injury, then that might mean something to you. Because when you go before the Creator, you'll remember it. You'll remember it.
It's a little different. Instead of going before the magistrate, you're going before the Creator. So it's a little bit different distinction there.
Well, you see what the natural law does when you do. So, for example, a natural law, you understand that it's a binding of the soul and the body, not just the body. Where commercial codified law is about binding the body to the statute.
That is powerful. Soul and the body. Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, explain that a little deeper, because that's kind of that kind of rolls into question number 2. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of having, you know, a lore trust versus a law trust?
Well, if you think about this right throughout history, what we have is, especially in these times, because we're in these times now, so we can remember this, is that when you get a codified law, let's say it's a commercial code, I'm not going to use a specific one, but you'll get the gist. If it's in the magistrate, you've gone to court, you've got a penalty fine on your car. That's in most jurisdictions. You have to pay a fine because you wasn't wearing your seatbelt, or you was driving too fast, or whatever. Yeah, you see, codified law gives punishment, whereas equity law gives remedy. That's the first thing. Now, you'll know that because when you go to school and you learn, you get to learn how to write, don't you? And when you write in sentences. That's what you're taught to do. The funny thing is that when they're teaching you, you're taught, that could also be a trespass against a man or woman, T-O-R-T-E, as against T-A-U-G-H-T. It's like when you go to court, you've been caught, C-A-U-G-H-T or C-A-U-R-T. So the mnemonics are very similar. But the point is that when you have this codified law, and the people that are enforcing, so now we've got that word force, which is not natural, is it? If you force something, then you're not doing something naturally, because when you do things naturally, there's no force in it. It happens naturally. So these guys and girls that are creating this enforcement rules are hiding behind the corporation. And the corporation forms from 2 words, corpse and oration. Corpse being dead entity, oration to speak. So I say to you, Michael, well, I'm sorry, it's not my fault. You were speeding and you've got to pay this fine, and I'm only doing what the court says that I've got to do. So I'm not applying my conscience, am I? I'm not thinking, how is this going to affect Michael? Right? Because I would want a remedy if I was applying my conscience, so that Michael could understand that there's a harm being caused and he wants to do something about it. That's equity. Whereas the commercial codes are punishment.
Yeah,
so that's why you'd want to do it.
You know, living in Hawaii, part of the Polynesian system, there was what's called the city of refuge. And what that meant is that, you know, in our world of Sharia law and different things, there's punishment. You know, there's a punishment factor in the tort system, whereas there's more of a forgiveness and a rehabilitation in the Polynesian culture. For example, way back when, if you could swim to the other island, let's say that you know, raped someone's wife or you stole something or whatever, and if you could get to the other island in the Polynesian culture, you could be rehabilitated. And they basically said, if you get to the city of refuge, this is a neutral place. So it wasn't always the decor or the doctrine to punish someone. You know, this is not necessarily true in all cultures. And so, but in our design of the tort system, that's kind of what we're dealing with. So, which leads us to question number 3, which is, well, what makes it natural, Darren? What makes it a natural lore? Explain that. What makes it natural?
Well, we just go back to what you've just said there about, you know, that there was remedy if you could swim over to the other island, then you were repatriated or you were forgiven or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will ask anybody that I come on these workshops with is one question. Have you ever made a mistake? If you're there that you've never made a mistake, you are 1 in 8 billion people, because everybody's made a mistake. So as it says in the Bible, he who without sin cast the first stone, that's equity. That is equity. So when you say, why is it natural? Because everything happens and flows naturally. Equity. If you go on the premise that you've made mistakes yourself, whether you did them by chance and didn't realize, or you did it deliberately, yeah, everybody on this call has made mistakes and created some form of harm or loss to other people. And they may not have done it vindictively, I'm not saying that at all, but we have. So there always has to be remedy, hasn't there, Michael? Because if you punish somebody for it, then they're going to maybe say, well, look, sorry, I did that because I had to, because of this, and this, and this. And so therefore they've got some justification for it. But when we provide remedy, and that's natural, then effectively that's what the difference between natural and unnatural and force. So you said to me there, what makes it natural? Something that flows, it makes sense. And under divine law, the naturalness is he without sin casts the first stone. And that's equity.
So really, it wasn't one of the questions, but I see that it's a necessary question is, can you explain equity in the divine law system versus the divine/natural law system versus the man-made land and water system? There is no equity in that system. Could you explain the difference? Well,
if you take the equitable principle that no man has any bounds over another, do they? Everybody's born equal. Yeah? So man was granted dominion over the earth. What does that mean, Michael?
Well, in my world, it means he's responsible and should be a good steward.
Right. So if I'm given dominion rights by it didn't say Michael's got it, but Darren hasn't, because I don't like Darren. Darren wears glasses, so it's not Darren. He's not having any decent rights, you know.
Darren has a snoring dog, and that snoring
Darren
dog
has a snoring dog. He's not getting any equity, right? So the point is God grant dominion over the earth, over the fish, and over the thing creepeth. So it didn't single out any particular man, all of us. That tells us we're all born equal, does it not?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's equity, isn't it?
Yes.
Right? Whereas you can set up a corporation in the UK, for example, where I am, and because that corporation says, hey, we're going to pull out if you're going to tax us like you are doing. We'll pull out. We'll come out of the UK, and then you'll not have our revenue and all our customers and this, that, and the other. So the UK corporation goes, oh, all right, then we'll give you relief. That's not treating people equal, is it? So all you guys out there listening to this, when you look at, the supposed laws, the commercial codes, are they dealt with fairly and equitably for everybody? And the answer is no.
No, he who has the gold makes the rules.
So he's got the gold, because he's got the gold. The gold is AU, so that's gold, and he's got the authority. So therefore, that's what gives him the authority, is the gold. He makes the rules, but he only makes the rules in a man-made system. Because when he goes up to God and says, yeah, right, he says, yeah, you've been a bit of a bad lad, haven't you? Well, what do you mean I had to do that when I was down there? Yeah, but you're in here now, and it's our rules. And the old saying, he that is bought by Caesar's coin is rendered to Caesar, and bought by God is God's. So it's equity is God, Caesar is a system.
Mm-hmm. And so that very much dovetails in number 5. So why does the sacred divine law trust reverse the statutes in the birth certificate system? Let's explain let's explain what the statutes in the birth certificate system is a little bit.
Right, let's explain something. Right. you're born, you're taught, T-O-R-T-E, a trespass against your actual natural rights. That's what's happening, right? Is that you're taught that you own things. It's the biggest psyop going. Oh, I've got my house, I've got my car, I've got my bank account. It's all mine and I want to protect it. It's mine and I don't want anybody taken off it. And all those people with lots of money then spend half their life earning the money and then the next half of their life worried about losing it. Because it's theirs, it's their possession, because they've got possessions. So what happens, Michael, when you're possessed? Good question.
Well, you're not yourself.
Exactly, right. But if you look under divine law, we don't have possessions. We don't own anything. We're just stewards whilst we're here. Yeah?
Oh.
Okay.
So possession, you become in a technically one under whatever it is that possesses you, which is why a lot of the times it's referred to in Hebrew when you are possessed, you are like a beast in bridle, which means a beast with something in its mouth being ridden by something.
Exactly. That's why we have a groom when you get married.
To groom the horse?
Well, it's all horse terms, isn't it, when you get married? Right? But we'll not get into that, but it is if you look into it. So when you're saying about what happens is the people that truly are in control, okay, they understand universal law. And one of the strongest, well, not the strongest, but the most used universal law is a power of suggestion. It's in your radios, it's in your TVs, it's in your music, right? Your literature, the power of suggestion. They'll create a problem. You'll then suggest, hey, this is no good. Come on, we can't have this going on in this land. And then they'll create a solution for you on the basis of you asked for it.
Problem, reaction, solution.
Exactly. So he that does not assert his rights has none. Okay. So they will not go against universal law. The actors may do, the politicians may do, poly being many, ticks being parasites. Okay. The politicians may not know this, but the true people that are the organ grinders, right, is that they understand universal law. So they're not going to contravene universal law. So they're going to get you to think that you own things, because then when you think of you owning things, then you might lose them. So now you're in fear, in a low vibrational state. But what they know is that you can't own anything, and nor can they, because it's all the creators. So what they'll do is they'll make a magician's trick. And they know when the baby's born with a full title. What does that mean? Well, the full title was granted under trust by God, wasn't it? Okay, divine right. So in that trust, we've got a settler, the one that has the asset to start with, God. And then you've got the trustee to administer the estate. Well, you can't do that because you're, less than 3 weeks old. You're probably a day old. You can't administer the estate, so your mother administers the estate. And then you've got the beneficiary. That's you. That's always you. You're the beneficial title holder. So the legal title rests with the mother, and the beneficial title rests with the baby. And the settler was God, because it was his asset to start with, and he granted you dominion. Quite straightforward, really. Yeah. Now we've got titles, Michael. Now we can intermeddle with the title as long as somebody's prepared to give it up. So it says to the mother, oi, you need to certificate that baby's birth. So the mother doesn't think, what, birth born, is that not different? No, you've got a certificate of the birth. All right, I'll do that. So on the birth certificate, the mother becomes the informant, the settler of the legal title. So the mother settles the legal title. Now, well, it's like every ship. If you look in maritime law, every ship has a name. You look on all of them. They've all got a name. So now what we've got to do is call this legal title, we've got to give it a name, an identity. So we give it John Paul Smith instead of John Paul. Now, John Paul Smith has been a creation settled by mother. And as a trustee for that estate is going to be the mother first and then the baby when he's 21 or 18. And the beneficiary is the crown or the state. And that's what they did. They didn't take any assets off you. They just restructured your title. Knowing that they can't ever take the beneficial title off you, but they can operate under legal titles. And mother did it of her own accord. Nobody put a gun to her head and said, you must do this. No, she did it of her own accord. That's why she's called the informant.
But not truly informed.
No.
So
well,
let's.
informed is a past tense, so that means there's no form of past. But we'll not get into that either. But we'll get into grammar there.
That's another talk. So yeah. This very naturally goes to number 6. Then, how does the sacred, divine, natural law trust, whether it's the basic, the inter vivus, or the master trust, restore divine title?
Okay. So remember earlier on we said, Michael, either does not assert his rights, has none. Yeah, that's a maxim. All your guys out there, read the maxims. There's 10 real pertinent ones. Yeah. Equity does not aid a volunteer. Right. So if you've not done anything about it, then you are not rebutting their presumption, because all that is a presumption of title. Okay. And so what's happened is that they created this trust out of that legal title for their ends. Okay. So you've got to go back.
Let's name that trust. That's the
constructive trust. Just call it a constructive trust, right? Which it is. So in trust law, a constructive trust means that, did your mum know about that trust? No. Did the baby know about the trust at 1 day old? No. The state might have known about it, but the characters in that trust don't know anything about that trust. All you guys that are sat out there now listening to this, did you realize that you were a party to a trust and have been for the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years? Did you know that? And if you can answer that truly and say, no, I didn't, that's a constructive trust. Because there is one there, just because you don't know about it, doesn't mean to say there isn't one, but there is. Now, why is it called a constructive trust? Because somebody constructed it without you knowing. It's not really called that, but it's a good analogy. Yeah? Now, trust law states, Michael, that if you apply your conscience and express your own private trust, then that evaporates the constructive trust.
Say that again, Darren. Powerful.
So in trust law, if you put your mind, your conscience, to an event of creating a trust, and you express that trust in writing, then that evaporates the constructive trust. Because you've applied conscience, you've applied your mind, so you've employed your free will that was given by the divine. So that is always a stronger trust than a constructive trust that nobody knew anything about.
So this is really the crux of everything right here, which is you evaporate the constructive trust, the unconscious, unknowing constructive trust that not only is subject unknowing, but also the assets and the tradability and the commodity that trust is. Correct?
Well, I think that my opinion on that is I'm not really talking here about, like some people do on the internet, about reclaiming your securities, because I think that the baby needs to walk before it can run.
Yeah, no, what I mean is I'm not talking about the straw man specifically. I'm talking about the frequency information, the intent. Matter follows the intent of consciousness. So what happens is you're shifting the matter by reclaiming the title.
Exactly. What you're doing is you're going back to God's law. That's why it's called a divine law trust, Michael.
Right.
Because you're going back to creating source energy. I mean, for those guys out there that don't believe in God and believe in something else, I'm not trying to upset them in any shape or form. I'm just saying that you're returning back to source.
Yeah, because if I understand this correctly, all those assets you might have and all these millions you might have or not have, or up to 200,000 or 2 cars, whatever, you know, your gold coins, your silver, all that stuff that you have is actually under the constructive trust. It's not actually yours.
It's not yours. Well, you can't own anything anyway, even in the express trust. What you can do though is manage it and get the benefit from it whilst you're alive.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the illusion here is that you don't have true title to those assets.
No, you don't. No, absolutely not. How can you? You're the fiction. You're a fictional character on a 2-dimensional piece of paper. How can you be real?
Right. So
that's like you saying to me, there's a game of Monopoly, Darren, and there's $100,000 on that Monopoly board. Go and spend it. Well, I can't. I can at the Monopoly board, but I can't go down to Walmart and spend it.
Right. So the distinction I'm just trying to make for the audience here is that even though you may be wanting to move these assets around and be having all these different things, at the level of which you're playing this game inside the statute system, you don't actually own those assets. Not only do you not own them because you're not the creator, but the system that's been overlaid on this planet, which is the tort statute system, it actually the illusion is that you think you own these things. You don't own them anyway, but it's a difference between not owning them and still trading them. They're trading on them. They're managing them for you because you don't know those assets are the creator's assets, but they act like they're their assets. So it's really important to make this distinction that you're collapsing that to get the constructive title.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to perfect your title back to where it was.
Yeah, and so some people's like, well, what does that have to do with my car? What does that have to do with my house? Well, we'll get there. But what we're just trying to explain here is let's talk about restoring divine title. And so when we talk about restoring divine title, when we come from the idea of that direct source relationship, that relationship gets restored now so that when going forward, and we'll talk about the logistics of this in a minute about what this means and what shows up practically. But let's continue. So why does this then, Darren, create privacy?
Well, because because nobody can intermeddle in a private agreement, can they? So if I say to you, let's do this, and we're not causing harm, loss, or injury, and it's private between ourselves, then there's no other third party that could intermeddle with it, could they? Why? How could they? But if you are causing harm, loss, or injury, then it isn't private anymore. Right. So basically, it's a private agreement, and even in tort law or in equity law, a private agreement is a private agreement, as long as you're not creating mischief.
Right. But still, with a constructive trust, you're still thinking that you have liberties and freedom, when in reality, they have the title to the full name on the birth certificate, which is making you a ward ultimately, in the beginning of inception under their jurisdiction.
Well, I mean, you get privileges, don't you? You get grant privileges. If somebody says to you, Michael, this is a law, you have to do it. That's not right, then, is it? You have to do it. That's the law. You have to. You have to be in bed by 10 o'clock. That's it. And we're going to lock your doors and you're not going to get out until 6 in the morning. And that's the law. You've got to do it. That's not expression of free will then, is it?
No, it's not. It's not equity either.
It's not inequity. No, it can't be. And so therefore you say, well, look, I'm not going to harm anybody. I've never harmed anybody. I've never done anything wrong. But why do I have to do that? It's the law. Got to do it. So that's coercion, slavery.
Right. So let's just stop for a second in the definition of what is a sacred natural law, divine law trust. And let's just ask any questions. Let's just open up to questions right now before I move into the elements or the features of the trust, just so I can get on the same, so I can make sure everybody's on the same page, because this is pretty revolutionary information when you start to understand that you're collapsing the title that was given to you unconsciously to you and your family and your mother at birth, and that you actually have a constructive trust. You're a party to a trust you don't know you're a party to. And so I just want to get some feedback. And someone say, well, I don't know why I need a trust. Why would that be important to me? I mean, I just want to protect my car and my house. I want to make sure that we're knocking on the right door in terms of, do you understand why you would want to have a natural law trust at this point? Is it making sense to you? Can you just address that? Anybody that has questions? Does anybody have questions at this point to that? Because I would assess that that's fairly new information to most people.
Well, what it does for me is, through the years, I've heard the 1%ers, all the families that control the illusion of control have set up private memberships and things like this. So this makes sense, because that has been happening. It's just, especially in my community, most of us don't know. So.
Yeah, and that's powerful, because this is not limited to anybody. I mean, this conversation about being underneath the Creator, it reverses everything in terms of what we've been taught from kindergarten forward about who is the state, who is this, taught in social studies about the government, the police, and the Declaration of Independence, and all these different things that we've been taught to do as children in any country that we're in terms of honoring our religion, our religious leaders, our governments, and so forth. And yet we don't even understand that we're actually, part of something that we didn't agree to be part of. And so when you get remedy on that, and you just say, well, I guess then I can move forward now by collapsing that constructive trust, that to me is extremely liberated, not only on because we haven't even gotten to the practicality yet of what the trust is about. We'll do that next. I just want to see if this is landing with the audience here. Like, would you like to have your title back? Would you like to have your title back? I mean, does that stir you on a soul and emotional level? Because it did to me when I first heard it. So go ahead, Seth. You had a question or a comment?
Oh yeah, earlier there was something I was going to mention. I think I basically was saying that we operate in both realms, the spiritual and the corporeal. So, what we do here, it's bound in heaven, so to say, as the scriptures speak of. So, yeah. I think most people only want to realize that we're operating in the physical, but we're not. We're operating in both.
Yeah, and above is same as above is below, and so I like that, and I want to just address that for a tiny second here. When you consider this fictional character, now this is where you have to kind of get really grounded with this. It's one thing to have this happen at birth and say, well, yeah, I know they got a birth certificate and so forth. No. If they just stopped at the birth certificate, great. But then they created an identity that they trade back and forth, and they make money on this fictional identity. So now if you look at that and say, well, man, I don't, I don't understand what's going on in the world. Why do I not have more power? Why do I not have more freedom? Why do I have more understanding? Why do I not have more, grace and generosity? Because your life energy is being pulled away from you by a fictional design.
Yeah.
And when you start to get that in your head, it's like, well, here I am out here busting my butt, trying to make a world that works for everybody. And this world is by design already crooked from the get-go. And you're like, well, how come I don't have enough energy? And it's like, do you imagine how much more energy you'd have if you restored your own title and you started to understand in the world of vibration and frequency and alchemy, what's truly happening here is this wealth scenario that's called this elite people, the 1%. The 1% are living off of our life energy. They are living and creating and doing things based on our life energy of a system that was created so they could trade and use us as commodities, essentially as cattle. And this is unknown to us that our title was taken at some point in time. So if not even getting into the practical aspects of this, which we're going to get into next now about the sacred divine natural Lord trust, just understanding the title, reclaiming title is kind of priceless at this point. Like you get your title back. And I think this is one of the first things that I noticed was like, oh my gosh, here we are out here trying to make a difference, create all these different things, take care of humanity, feed the homeless and so forth. And we don't really even understand that we're not even aware that our title and our birth certificate is being traded and used daily as some corporation or some stock. And it's like, oh my gosh, when you understand the implications of that, you start to understand how it's not equity and how it's actually an illusionary, it's a fun factory. It's an illusionary factory. But now you wonder why you don't have the life you want to have, why you're enslaved, why you're paying all these taxes, why you're paying these property taxes. And those of you living in the United States, it's going to get much more interesting because these are the main ways that they can tax is through the property and through goods and services. And most of that's happening already. But now the next land of opportunity is air, water, everything else. That's why the whole carbon tax and why the whole thing about what's happening on the planet as far as, the planet heating up, all the rest of that stuff. The carbon tax or the thing they're trying to create so they can tax that, tax the water, tax the air, tax the soil. I mean, these are all things in addition to taxing the fact that your title is being taxed ultimately. So I just want to pause with that. And so are there any more questions as far as understanding the sacred, divine, natural Lord trust and why it's important? Okay. No more questions? We'll move on then. Okay, so Darren, let's now talk about, what is it? What are the elements of the divine Lord trust? What is it made up of? The restored title, assets, having a legacy. Can you explain a little bit about what either the basic, the inter vivus, or the master trust? Can you explain a little bit about what you're actually creating with the sacred, divine, natural Lord trust?
Right, that's a pretty broad question.
It
So
is.
I'm gonna have to try and explain it the best I can. Right. Yeah. So essentially, if we start from the beginning, what is a trust? Okay, would that help?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So basically,
what I want to do now, Darren, is I want to segue from move from the why would this be important? Why does it matter to me? Why do I understand it? And then let's get to the practicality of it. So
what do you want me to kind of elaborate here now? What?
Yeah, just start about what's we talked about purpose in terms of a theoretical, philosophical, esoteric reason. Now let's ground it back into, now that we have title, let's talk about all the practical things we do about protecting assets, having legacy, so forth and so on.
Okay, so first of all, if we start that we've got our title back and perfected it, okay, so we know we're there, yeah? And the reason why we perfected it, because we put it and expressed in our trust, in our private trust, okay? So what's happened there is, Michael, is that the trustees of that private trust now operating on behalf of that legal fiction for the benefit of the man or woman with life and conscience. Okay. So what's happening on the ground level now is that we have a perfect title. And so that means that anything that we have that we own, or we use in inverted commas own, but our cars, our property, our cash, our investments, and etc., can be now settled into that trust jurisdiction. And so therefore now it's not part of a statutory or commercial jurisdiction, it's now part of a divine law jurisdiction. So here's a bit of controversy for some people maybe, is that the ecclesiastical system apparently was created in the 8th century and nothing happened before that. Nothing, it was just a big void. Now, if you really believe that, that's up to you. But what we're saying is that all these rules and regulations that you are operating at the moment have only been temporary. They're only been a layer. And basically what we have is proper divine law that stretches back eons. And all we've got to do is remember them. And when we remember them, then we step into a different jurisdiction. We step into that jurisdiction of equity. But if we can only remember from 1066, where feudal law came in, then that's all we're going to believe in. Or if we're going to operate from the 8th century, 750 AD, when the Roman Catholic Church began, and the Pope is the God's representative on this planet. But what happened before then? So to answer your question is, once you have got this and you understand that you perfected your title, everything that you have for the time that you're here is in equity, and it's not in commercial statutory jurisdiction. So what that means, Michael, is this. If you want to make a claim against my estate, you now have to do that in equity. You can't do it under statutory commercial rule, because equity always prevails over statutory commercial rule.
So explain that, how, because that gets into when someone looks at that from a legal lawful perspective, like, let's just make it practical. I've got a daughter-in-law doesn't like what happened in the trust. She's going to come from a legal lawful perspective, but I'm in the equity perspective as far as my private trust. What does that mean in practicality?
But when private trust, is that providing, is the private trust, is that creating harm, loss, or injury?
No.
Okay. So, and the person or the man or woman that wants to claim against it, are they operating with commercial liability?
I would think not.
Well, then they can't operate on my jurisdiction then, can they? Because they've got to bring their conscience to it. So we've got a complete mismatch. No matter
if they try to haul you into the legal system.
Well, then who's taking care? You see, this is the big kind of facade. Is, you say, oh, the bank took my money off me, it foreclosed on me. The bank never did that. Men and women did it, mate. The bank never did it. You go talk to your bank, Wells Fargo Bank, and have a chat with it, and you talk to the building outside, and everyone thinks you're crazy because it doesn't speak back. Right? So what happens? Well, men and women have to speak for it because they're the ones with a conscience, aren't they? Right? If they don't put their life to it, then the bank does nothing, does it? Right? If the system was tomorrow, oh, well, this isn't a fair system, the men and women aren't going to abide by it, in the banks, in the courts and the police. No, we're going to do the right thing and work in equity, then we'd have to. So the fact is that why? Because a man or a woman has to provide conscience, has to provide their mind. What they do with corporations is they take your mind off you. Because what they do is they'll say, oh, I had to do it because the court said that, or the bank said that, or this, that. I foreclosed on it. I know that you've got 3 kids and a wife to feed, and now you're all on the streets and you're destitute, and it's absolutely abhorrent for you. But I didn't do it, Michael. The bank did it, because they don't take any personal responsibility. So it's easy for them to sleep at night, because they go home and they say, oh, yeah, poor old so-and-so. He lost his house today and he's out on the streets now. Oh, what's he going to do? Well, I don't know. It's sad, isn't it? It's really sad, but that's what banks do. But no, the bank didn't do it. The man and woman did it, because they wrote the notices to get them out. So if you're going to make a claim against my trust, you have to come in equity. And you have to create a remedy called commercial liability. So that if you give me the runaround and you've told lies or whatever, then there's got to be a remedy for that. And the best remedy is that you take in full responsibility for your actions. And that's commercial liability in this setting. That's not unfair, because you're saying to me, you want something from the trust and you want $100,000 from the trust. That's a claim in financial. So I want to know that if you make that claim and you've made a mistake, what's your financial reimbursement to the trust? If you can't come with that, then you've not got what's called equal consideration. And if there's no equal consideration, there's no agreement. An agreement is to agree the mind.
I just love the way that we start to take the English language apart here and really understand that the slavery is built into the language. And so it's quite, and that's to say nothing of what we could have a whole class on, what vibrationally that means when you start to use language to enslave yourself and your own DNA and your own blood and your own oxygen. So let's that's a Laura Liddy conversation.
that's another day's work, is that?
That's another aspect of the sacred trust of Remembrance Sanctuary. Okay, so let's back up, because I jumped a piece here because I wanted to get to the technical aspect, but this is a very important piece to go back and visit. You started talking about that there is, when you're coming from natural law, you're coming from divine law. It didn't start in the 1800s or the 1066 or whatever, or when William came to England. It started much earlier. So one of the things that we've talked about is, and even earlier than the Roman Catholic Church or the introduction of Christianity, although that's definitely an aspect of this. So what we've talked about,
they're all layers to it, aren't they? But they're not the be all and end all source, are they?
Right. What we've talked about in the past, and hold on just a minute, Laura, because I know where you're going, is we've talked about the consideration that when we divine, and this is not necessarily the basic trust, but when we talk about the inter vivus trust, because the basic trust, we'll talk about it in a little bit here too, is the design of the trust overall is to recognize these different articles and these different cosmologies, correct?
Yeah.
So let's explain that just for a second, in terms of the overall trust identity, that it can go all the way back to, the beginning of anything. It could be back to the, it could have Maori cosmology in it. It can have, indigenous cosmology in it. It can have, Russian Orthodox or tribal, Germanic tribal information in it. It's not limited to, if we go back to the history of Germanic tribes, those now are what forms France and Spain and Germany and so forth. But before that, they were Germanic tribes, So let's explain that aspect of the bespoke aspect of the trust, which is how it can be really customized for your value system and for the things that you hold dear.
Okay, so let's just backtrack that a little bit. Okay. When we look at the Constitution, right? So we know that the English constitutions in the written format is older than the American Constitution. Yeah. So, and the English Constitution states, going back to 1688, that they ask the monarch to uphold the laws of God and that of the gospel. What does that mean? That means that he's operating under divine law.
Right.
Not it? It also asks, will they honour the ancient customs of this realm? Ooh, so that's now before the Bible, because the laws and customs of this realm can go way back. There's no time span there, is there?
Right. That's tribal.
He doesn't say the laws and customs of this realm dating back to 2010. He says the ancient laws and customs of this realm.
Yeah.
So he doesn't give a time, does he? Right?
Right.
Now, so the guy that was speaking earlier on was saying absolutely right. If you look at the laws and customs of most realms, they always appreciated and endorsed kinship. Whether it's Anglo-Saxons, Brehon, Caledonian, First Nations, they always looked after the tribe over the self.
Yeah.
They were all in it together. Yeah,
And
can look at all the Vedic ones, all the ones that go back. I mean, the guys that you've got guys on here that have blown me apart on this in terms of their knowledge compared to mine. But I know, and the little bit that I've looked at, that even all the ancients, the Hebrews, all go back to that they knew that they were stewards of this plane of earth.
yeah.
They never knew that they didn't own anything. And everything was for the collective.
Which actually will lend itself as we go further as the sanctuary, when we begin to go heal the relationships with the First Nations people around the world, that we can, because what you're saying from an applicational technical point of view is that the king and the pope never had the right to invade with the right of discovery and the papal bulls all these indigenous lands, because they really, especially the monarchy, were in, they were agreed by oath to honor the rules and the ways of the land, which would include the Africans, would include the Latin Americans, which would include the Maori, which would include the Aborigine, and on and on and on. So they violated their own oath when they went and did Manifest Destiny, and when they went and did the right of discovery, and so forth and so on. So by addressing the lore, the sovereign natural lore, divine lore, trust approach, we can actually restore their title, which is sort of a backdoor thing that's I'm very excited about here. So do I have that correct, Darren?
Well, yeah, and you're absolutely right. And what we're doing is, by using customary law, which is what we call it, customary law, the laws and customs of this realm, I am not then I'm not putting a confine around any place on this plane of earth, or if you want to be swirled round and round the world, because that's what happens when you do world things, you spin it round and round, right? So right. by having customary law, I'm not putting a time span on how far this goes back, because I'm going back to creative source. Okay. And they already agree that there is such a thing as customary law, because the monarch adheres to laws and customs. Now, if you want to get me on the papal bulls, if you look at the papal bulls, this is what we have got to understand, and we're touching on grammar, because the papal bull says the God representative on earth from 1302, Pope Boniface VIII, and it says the human creatures. What are they? What are the human creatures then? Because human, you, is colour, man, man. Everything that's coloured on this plane of earth is not authentic. It looks like something, but isn't. And he called them human creatures. What's a creature? A creature was what man was granted dominion over, by all accounts, by his boss, the creator. So why is he not using creator language? And why is he using human creatures that's not actually representative in the Bible? human is not written in the Bible. There's no word of human in there. And if you look at all the other Bibles, there isn't one. It's not called it. We're called mankind because we're meant to be kind. That's our
Right.
job. Yeah.
Right. I can tell that. I can tell this will be a workshop all by itself. I didn't realize that we have never talked about this before directly. So I love that this is another talk that can come up. I know that Laura is wanting to bring something here.
I mean, yeah, my kids always say, Dad, you know, you don't have to know some crap, don't you?
Oh, go ahead and unmute, Laura. I'm muted in. Okay, there you go. Yeah.
All right.
So
So I just want to bridge a few concepts just to kind of like ground a lot of this stuff. So today, just so you all know, is the day of Samek, which is technically, if I can show you this letter real quick, it's right here. You see this letter? It's one vertical line with multiple vertical horizontal lines. Okay. So what it represents is structure. So this specific letter of the line with multiple lines represents structure. Now, the whole plane that we're made up of, we're made of earth and we're made of spirit, which is technically just four corners. It's one line, one line. All right. What we have to understand is straw man, or like the way that we're being like technically drained, is similar to how a voodoo doll works. It's not you. It's something that takes the place of you above the layer in which you exist. So what we're doing with trust law and what we're doing with aligning ourselves in the true trust or the relationship with our creator is we are bridging ourselves because we've technically been a layer up from our actual given rights. So we're a layer up, so we lose rights. And the higher you go, the more in a way that the spiritual things can begin to state from you. So we're technically taking off these layers and going right back to the two layers, earth and spirit. With that relationship, we then are granted that which we've been inherited or given by our creator, which is ownership or equity, actually. Sorry, we're given equity, which is stewardship. So the reason I'm saying this is so that we all can understand that what we're doing is we are returning to the source of our plane, not existing in this higher plane where we can technically be taken from, like the scarecrow. All right. And so with this understanding, what happens is we also get direct resource. This is a benefit or asset of the beneficiary. So as we develop this trust and we have it set with certain players or certain spirit that we connect to, we receive these assets. And the assets are something that are, as beneficiaries, we may use. But when you have all these extra layers, who is it that owns each one of those layers that's receiving your asset, that's receiving your benefits? This is why we have so much of this destruction in our life, so many things that we are technically say, or we're told we're owned, but we don't own and can be taken, is because we didn't make these other planes. These planes were made by beings who understood things dimensionally matrix type of level. So if we want to reframe ourselves, we need to think in layers. And how do we get to the original layer that we were given? Okay, I'm done.
that's excellent. And that actually moves very easily into restoring title. So you restore title, Darren, and I'm going to let you take the next part of this. Restore title by putting your title back under the private trust. Correct?
Well, you're correcting the mistake of an entry into a record, aren't you? Because the mistake was made by taking what was yours and placing it somewhere else. And the chap that just Laura just explained that there, absolutely brilliant. I'm in awe of that. That is absolutely. Yeah, it'd probably take me another 5 years to actually elaborate that as well as he could, to be fair, because that was brilliant. So thanks for that. But yes,
well, that's okay because you guys are going to be teaching together on a stage, so no worries.
You know, I mean, that was like just awesome, absolutely awesome, and that was worth turning up for, just that in itself, you know. Yeah. So, in actual fact, I wish well, you are recording it, so I need to remember what I said.
Yeah.
But yes. So the answer to your question is, you're going back to source. You're going back to the creator, right? The source energy, and then everything stems from that, Michael. But if you don't know who you are, like it says in the Matrix, we are here and we are mixed with delinquents who don't know who they are. That's what it says. He puts it a bit harsh, yeah. But what he's saying, he said, we're mixing with delinquents who don't know they are, because if they don't know who they are, then they don't know how to work in equity. So my question would be, and it's only a question, but if you want to get back to source energy, how can you get that without knowing equity? And without knowing what Laura's just explained there about the layers? How would you ever get back? Because you haven't got a sat nav to get back there. You don't know, because you don't even know it's there.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
really
it's a bigger picture, isn't it, Michael? Because
It
if I
is.
embrace equity, they're actually now working in source energy. So now abundance and everything flows from that.
Yeah, and that's really, I mean, we could go back to saying this from the beginning, like, what is a sacred, divine, and natural or trust? What's its purpose? To restore equity and to restore your connection to the source. It's really about restoring your connection to the source. And then there's the whole physical aspect of it, which is the idea that, you have assets, you have you want to protect, you have a legacy you want to create for your family, you want your will, your last will and testament to be known. There's all these aspects, or what I'll call features of it. But really it begins with that whole conversation about, listen, I want to restore my title. I want to put myself back under private trust, and I want to reconnect alchemistically with my source. Yeah. And that's and Lydia, I don't know if you're willing to take this question, but I keep getting nudged by a spirit to ask this question. And Laura, maybe you can, and it's not part of the script, so I'm not going to go off script, but I'm going on to the other script here, the divine script, which is, now if we take this apart and we say, okay, now we got the understanding of source title, now we understand the illusion and the what did you call the title that was created? The trust was a constructive trust. So this constructive trust. So not only am I a party to this constructive birth certificate trust, I'm a party of a trust to the medical industry, to the banking industry, to the food and agricultural industry. I'm a party to many trusts that I don't know I'm party to.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So if we talk about this in terms of practical terms, this is the baseline to start to restore your relationship with source, is to put your title back under private equity trust, under the divine trust. Now, once you do that, this begins to unravel the overlay. I'm going to call it overlay because that's the only term I can use right now, which is, let's look at what would overlay if we reclaim our sacred divine stewardship as trustees, and we're not going to participate in the counterfeit system anymore. Not that we're going to torpedo it or sink it. We're just going to move away from it. What will happen in the health and wellness industry, in the body temple, if this happens? And I want to throw this out. It was not part of my script. It's not part of, like, how does the trust work? It's just what God, Ahua, I can't even talk right. Slow down.
It's all right. I got you. So what you're talking about is technically like what is restored to you once you come back into perfect alignment, you can say, once you come back into relationship with your source. So this is technically where we start going into promises. And so the promises that were given by the Creator to his children, which is man and woman and children, these are promises in a trust. And so the thing is that they always talk about in Indigenous law that your word is your binding trust. So when Yahuwah gives his word through his prophets, or the Most High gives his word through his prophets, he is also giving a promise. And one of the things you'll see about in the scriptures, a lot of the times in the old scriptures, like the Old Testament, he gives a promise and he never revokes that promise. He will then, that promise can either turn into a blessing or a curse. Just like, let's say, the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin was given warrior strength and the ability to pretty much go into enemy territory, ransack the place, and bring back the spoils and distribute it amongst the tribe. But what happens is if they come out of that alignment with the creator, they become bloodthirsty animals like wolves. This is why they were given the symbol of the wolf. So what happens is when we start coming back into alignment and back into our nature, which is the nature of spirit and earth, like our culmination, we end up receiving these promises, which were given by the word of our creator. And those promises are our assets.
Wow. Okay. So now, Liddy, from the temple perspective, I'm going to ask you to address this and what we talked about yesterday with sound frequency, light, color, and sound. So what's happening when we return, and Laura, you're certainly willing to pick this up too, but I want Liddy just to address it if she will, if she's available. So from a wellness perspective, what is being mapped out here when you return back to the sacred divine Lord trust?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Michael, you know what we were speaking about is going back to exactly what Laura and everybody's talking about, is that everything impacts everything. And so understanding that the frequency, sound is part of the healing process. And even to the point of where in history, we have standard tuning that is off. So the Rockefeller Foundation, the military commercialization of music, was turned into 440 hertz, whereas can we call it love and the DNA is a 528 hertz. So the whole entire harp, going back to the Kenor, David, as he had his harp of the made of cedar used, was tuned, Beethoven, Mozart, all at the 528, 417 and 432 hertz. So maybe as just imprinting, knowing that the frequencies can be alluded to herding of populations. So we now have the monopolization in the music industry that was imposing populations into greater aggression and social agitation. I mean, emotional distress. I mean, everything impacts everything. So I guess maybe I'm just adding a layer, I think is what we're talking about, is layers. I came into the call a little bit late because of having to care for something here, but I'm just going to maybe add that little vivid maybe thought that health, peace, and harmony is what I think we're all talking about. Thank you.
Yeah, what I was orchestrating that for was because we're party to a trust that happened at the Constructive. It's not Constructive. Is it Constructive, Darren? Is that the name?
The
Constructive
trust that was created for you was a constructive trust. Yeah.
Okay, so the Constructive trust set the template really for the whole way that we participate in the world. It's all of the different things that were underneath this overlay. Our agriculture, our banking, our medical industry, our death industry, everything that we do. You know, you could even say our entertainment industry, our sports industry. We're all party to a series of trusts we don't understand we're party to. And it got initiated by the birth certificate. If you follow that bouncing ball with me. Okay, so that means that when we start to go back and we start to have authentic conversations from the sovereign perspective inside the trust with your title back, you can begin to unwire and look at these from a very different perspective. That there's an overlay, a conscious overlay with conscious elements to it that they're designed to alter frequency, designed to add layers, and designed to destruct and distort and destroy the relationship with source. And when we start to understand this, as we're beginning to do right now you understand number one step to take is to reclaim your title. So it's like, you know, when we hear the word trust, it's like, okay, well, I want to protect my assets. What we're really talking about here is restoring your title with creation and with the divine in such a way that you now take back your title and your equity in the relationship and your trusteeship on the planet, which is why this is provided by Pure for Planet Global Mission, which is what our idea. We can't raise our life force energy if we don't own our own life force, energy. Do you understand?
It's interesting you say that, because I've written a piece, and I've just been, while you've been talking, and section 6, it says the true estate is permanent. All possessions, lands, titles, even civilizations fade, but the true estate, best divine authority, is never severed. It is permanent, eternal, and unalienable. The illusion of ownership is binds men and women into attachment to shadows of the sovereign steward, is not to own, but to administer faithfully, remembering forms are temporary vessels for the eternal substance. So what we've got to understand is that, like, even when we do things like calendars, calendar is a trick, because the timeline's a trick. The timelines are not real. And by getting you into a Gregorian timeline, that's taking you away from source, because it's lost about 3,500 years, right? So they take you out of that. And so all the previous timelines, and if you look at, and then I go on to say about previous timelines, before Rome's imposition, men and women lived by rhythms and not debt books. They and so basically they worked in nature. So when you ask me what's natural, we did. That's customary law. That's before all this stuff happened. We just worked in nature, like the squirrel. He gets on out of his little hut. He gets his nuts and he says, "It's time to go and put those nuts," and we're hibernating. He hasn't got a calendar, a pay of duty to somebody else, and he's not saying to his little Mrs. Squirrel, "Look, it's time, you better crack on here, because it's, it says it's 5 o'clock at 23rd of September, so we've got to get them nuts out." They do it naturally, right? He doesn't need a calendar, and he doesn't need time.
No.
He knows, because it's natural.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And if you look at the Mayans, I've got it here. Egyptian cycles were Heliacal, rising of the Sirius and the Nile floods. The Mayan long count, they all did it by natural rhythm. Mm-hmm. And if you saw me on a dance floor, that's not natural rhythm. But you know where I'm going. So the thing is, that's what we've got to get back to. That's the true source. So,
can I have a little more time with you, or do you have another appointment?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, because we're going to go a little long today, folks, because we need to get this out into consciousness, not just on the Zoom here. We're putting this into consciousness. I hope you know this. This is not just the people that are gathered here, the founders that are gathered in the sanctuary. This is what you are actually, we're doing our own spell work right now, okay? We're casting spells in a harmonic way out into consciousness. And so, that's kind of what, what I believe is happening. So you may or not agree, but that's what I know is happening. So if we go on to the right-left brain conversation, oh, Michael, that's very nice. I appreciate all your esoteric information, this frequency vibration. It's very interesting. But, I got to pay my bills. Okay, got it. And, I live in the world, and I get stopped by the police, and I have flashing lights in my back window. Yep, okay, got all that. And I'm scared to death about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. Or, I lived in Ecuador, and they had biosuits on during COVID. So there's all this reality that we're surrounded by, right? So let's talk, Darren, about the aspects of the sovereign, divine, Lord, natural trust that are those right brain kind of things. I think it's the right brain, which is like, ABCs. So what are the features? We got.
I thought that was the left brain, to be fair, Michael.
Sorry,
the right brain.
Thank you.
The creative aspect.
You can tell where my brain. You can tell where my brain operates from.
So what do you want to ask? I mean, so when right? Okay. Let me just. I mean, this could be a bit controversial, but I'll illustrate the point.
As if we haven't hit controversy already at this call.
Right. So I'm going to say that somebody wants me to have a medical intervention. Read into that what you like, right? And they're saying to me, I have to take this medication because it's good for me. Because there's big virus around that's going to kill everybody, right? Now, that's quite scary stuff for some people. So, Michael, you're the doctor. Yeah, you're not the physician, are you? Because you didn't tell me that. You said you were the doctor. Yeah? So a doctor is different to a physician. And the reason why they're called doctors is because they're not physicians. Because a physician's about well-being. A doctor is somebody that operates the docking and the manifest at the harbour.
Wow.
But we'll not get into that, right? Because that's me. I can't help myself, guys, when I get onto grammar. Because grammar is a...
We need you to do that, so don't help yourself.
Yeah, because grammar comes from the French grammaire, which is book of spells. Anyway, getting back to this scenario, right? That you've told me I have to have a physical intervention for my well-being, Mike. Now, in equity, will you take full responsibility for that claim?
No, the doctor doesn't take full responsibility for the claim. It's the institution the doctor works for.
Right. So is the doctor working on behalf of the institution or for the institution?
Ooh. Don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, because you see, if he works on behalf of the institution, then the institution's got commercial liability. But if the doctor works for the institution, he's taking personal liability. So it's quite a good question to ask, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm operating from my equitable stance and my consciousness. So now I'm asking them, who is taking full commercial liability, so that if something happens to me untoward and he's making a claim that this is good for me, then surely he will apply his conscience to that. And if he won't apply that conscience to that, then should I go ahead and go with the medical intervention? So in equity, I've now created remedy for myself, because I learned to ask questions, because I knew I was working in equity. But if I work in statutory or commercial codes and you say you've got to have this because it's a law, and we've just passed a bill at the Senate that says you've got to have it, and I go, oh, all right, then best do then, right? Then I've devoid myself of my own free will. I've given it up, and he that does not assert his rights has none. So I didn't work in equity. That answer your question, Michael?
It answers the, let me make sure that I'm available here. It answers one of the aspects of the provisions. Let's talk about, someone goes off this call and they go to talk to an attorney, or they want to talk about estate planning or whatever it is. And so they're going to have lots of questions. Let's compare and contrast some of the things that are inside of the sovereign natural law, divine law trust. Some of the things like the provisions, the articles, and then the innocence.
Right. So what we have to do when we write our equitable trust, we have to work in equity, don't we? Yeah. So therefore, if we work in equity, what we've got to do is we've got to protect that agreement, haven't we? Yeah. Because that would be working in equity. Yeah. So therefore, the first thing we've got to understand is that if somebody wants to intermeddle with that trust, then they've got to work with equal consideration. So there's provisions in the divine law trust to help the trustees understand that, so that when somebody wants to intermeddle with the trust, we can ask that question. Are you coming here on equal consideration in equity? Because if you don't, if you're not, then I'm a trustee and I swore an oath of good conscience, good faith and good character. And I actually did swear an oath, and I did put my thumbprint and my autograph to that. So I bound my soul and the body along with all the other people that created that trust. And now as a collective energy, we bound our soul and our body to uphold the integrity of that trust. That's what I've done. So therefore, I can't give you this information unless you meet us on equal terms. And so that's what the Inter Vivos Trust will do. It will give provisions within the trust so that the trustees can do their job, just like the Bible does.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the same.
Got it.
I would like to say just one thing. One thing that I've noticed about searching out and looking into sovereignty and like trust law, court law, you know, all those different things, is that majority of the people who uphold the system only do it because they're not held liable.
Exactly.
So when we learn the actual language that allows us to convict the people who are enforcing this type of law, we automatically become empowered because they don't want to be held responsible. So they won't arrest you. They won't convict you. They won't do these things because now they're being held reliable, and that scares them.
And you can get them reliable by getting them in equity.
Boom.
And that's why
Absolutely.
this space is so very important. Thank you all for gathering here.
And that chap there, that you both of you just said some brilliant things there, but you're absolutely right. If I get a state actor saying to us, we've got one at the moment where they said, oh, we realise now, after 8 months of going backwards and forwards, wasting our time and effort and energy, we realise now we can't intermeddle in a private trust. But we may sign an NDA depending. So we wrote back to them and said, that's fine. We are the trustees. This is what we're obliged to give you. We will give you these documents on the basis of you sign an NDA and a man or woman takes full commercial liability for this claim. Now, you imagine that in that council. Everybody's saying, well, I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to take responsibility for it. Well, can you do it? No, get lost. I'm not taking it in my private capacity. And nobody will want to take responsibility for it. Yeah? Just imagine the Monopoly board. The little dog's on the Monopoly board waiting to go around, and nobody will throw the dice and nobody will move the dog. So the dog goes nowhere, because nobody can put their conscious effort to it. It's the same thing. Get them in equity. We're not talking about trying to avoid things here. We're talking about being fair and just and returning back to source. That was what the rights we were giving us. So why are we giving them up without actually asking the questions?
Mm-hmm.
I've got
and if there isn't a constructive trust there, all we've got to ask is there a constructive trust? Are you entering this arrangement with your commercial liability? Because we don't want any porcupines now, do we? Right? And ask them, right? And if they turn around and say unequivocally, honestly, I'll swear on the Bible, there is no constructive trust, then we know, don't we? But I bet you don't get that answer. In the same way, when we ask them, can you disclose, or we ask them to disclose the dictionary definition and the manual style of grammar with this conveyance of claim, they never answer. Now, if you look at equity, equity says he that seeks equity must do equity. And he that seeks equity must have clean hands. And Romans 8:2 says that The meaning of the words is the spirit of the law. So with all those three things together, if you're writing me a notice saying that I'm obliged to do something and I don't understand it, and I ask that question, sorry, I don't understand it, can you give me full disclosure of the meaning of the words, which means the grammar, manual style, and dictionary definition, and you decide to tell me that you're not going to do it, that is not clean hands and that is not equity. So you've put the claim in dishonor just with those words.
Hallelujah.
So Darren, just in a practical area here, what's going to be in this lore trust is the divine sacred divine natural lore trust. Is going to be all of the information that we just talked about in terms of the provisions and the articles.
Well,
and
yeah, also, because we need to be the change that we want to see in the world. So we've got to lead by example.
Right.
Yep. We have to learn.
And then we've got, at the same time, we've got the ABCs of the assets, and then the will and testament of the person you're writing the trust for. Okay, so with a trust, you need three certainties, guys. Certainty of intention. Why did you do it? Certainty of subject matter and certainty of objects. So why did you do it? What was your intention? Was your intention to deceive somebody, or was it intention to go back to source and create a legacy for people? Let's say it's a legacy for people, because that's the right answer, right? Do you know what you were putting in it? And do you know who was going to benefit from it? That's certainty of objects and certainty of intention, certainty of objects, and certainty of subject matter. If your trust has those three components in there, that is a lawful trust. Doesn't matter what jurisdiction. That's a lawful trust. Now, if you then make it irrevocable, like somebody said very eloquently early on, that the God's promises were irrevocable, and you make an irrevocable settlement, that sounds like what you've just said about the God's law's promises. So now we're in tune. We are now just replicating what's already there in source.
Yes. This is also, I want to add, this is a big reason why if you go around the world and you look at all the major religions and even non-major religions, every one of their gods had some sacred text that was written, because that was their lore, that was their law, that was their lore. And based on their lore, they had the clear intention, what they were here to do in their trust, because trust in Hebrew or original language means to bind. So whatever you trust, you bind to. So whether you trust in God, you bind to God. Whether you trust in Yahweh, you bind to Yahweh, or Kali, or whatever these Allah. You're binding to that lore, which means you're binding to that law and that way that lore states that you are.
Yeah.
So
If I may.
Yeah, you may.
I think most of you know I love the nuts and bolts and mechanics and the deep aspects of it, and also spent many years looking at the judicial and the contract verbiage within the scriptures. And I think we can easily complicate things in our own minds, right? You know, we get all this information and there's this aspect and this aspect and this aspect, and it's extremely important. And what Darren's brought up, brilliant. I love it. Lore, Michael as well. Excellent, excellent information. But I also want to remind us that we don't want to forget the action aspect. And there's also the simplicity aspect. So as far as to me, one of the most important things we can do in a simple manner is to remember that we must approach the Heavenly Father and ask. He's given us authority too, but repeatedly we must ask every time when we partake in something like, something like this. So I just want to encourage everyone to go into prayer before we enact any of these aspects within our life. And the second thing I wanted to bring up was, it kind of ties into the action and simplicity, was that, I want to encourage each and every one of us, put this in action, obviously after the prayer, but put this in action, and we can start with simple facets and build upon that. So when we enter into the more in-depth mechanics like we're speaking about today, we have a foundation already built. So I've encouraged people for many years, make your proclamation in both the physical and spiritual realm, and put that into action. So it could be as simple as serving notice through a social media platform that goes out to an extended audience. Write this down, make your claim, and now it's out in the heavenly courts. And it's out, like as in Michael just mentioned, you're putting it out into the ether, you're putting it out into the world, so to say. So my whole thing is, I'm just trying to encourage people, make one step tomorrow or today, do something today, then tomorrow elaborate upon it and do something else. And once this whole sacred trust comes together, that foundation's already within each and every one of us, and we can convey it more easily to those that we care about. So that's just my.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying, Seth, is actually the foundation of why the sanctuary is existing, which is the curriculum. Because part of what you're talking about is practicing and calling people out, not in a negative way, but calling people out, calling them forth, rather, is a better way to say it, and understanding who they are and who they are in terms of their relationship with creation, and also the relationship in terms of the world. So the bridge that's being built here by this conversation and by the Sacred Divine Lord Trust is you add exactly where I wanted to go next in this conversation, which is the power in the physical world of having, which we're in but not of, right, is having the distinction of now, okay, I have claim title. Now, Darren, let's talk about what that actually means in the physical world. So, for example, you've told me within the last couple of weeks that there is a barrister who's a top private trust attorney, or barrister, we call attorney, you call barrister, solicitor, that has reviewed this Sacred Divine Lord Trust, probably inter vivos trust, and has said, I can't write this. So why can't he write this?
Well, he can write it in concept, but in application he can't, because he's used to writing in ambiguous terms, because that's what he's been trained to do. Because if you look at all the codes, statutes, acts, they're always open to interpretation, aren't they? Yeah. That's why we have in the UK the Interpretation Act, because they've got words written down there that people don't understand what they are. So the first thing is, could he write it? Well, now he's seen what we've written, yes, but he wouldn't want to attempt to, because he understands intellectual property. And secondly, he couldn't write it the way that we write it, because he's not wired that way. He just doesn't understand it. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Is we just had a conversation about do this today. So you're saying doing this now, but today too is in the future, and day is in maybe now, maybe in the future. So the problem is, in law, you cannot write in different tenses in the same lines. You've got to keep it in the same tense. That's just manuals, grammar styles that you read, all of them, Oxford English, Chicago manual style, they're all the same. they have this way of writing, which means that if you write and mix the tenses in contract law, then that is now a problem. Because I don't know whether you want to go in the future, in the past, or you're in the present. I don't know. And to write in present tense style, try it. It's not easy. We can.
Right.
And he wouldn't know how to do that. Now, he would do if he practiced, Michael, because I remember when I first started writing in present tense style, I would write a 4-paragraph letter, and it'd take me half a day, because I'd look at it and go, I've just put that in past tense, or I've just contradicted that. And it's rewiring your brain. And we write in proper present tense.
Yes, and that present tense, I believe when you go back to restoring title, you're not limited by when they say things like, well, this case, we're using this case as evidence, or this precedent's case, so forth and so on. They use trickery as a way to move things and maneuver things. When you're saying, listen, we're going to go back to, there is no limitation to where we can source this document from, because we're not coming from a place of any limitation. We're not coming by any statutes. We're not coming by, William the Conqueror or any of that kind of stuff. We're coming from what it is that goes back to where the origin of this relationship began.
Well, for example, right? When you say it's about being in equity, Michael.
Yeah.
So if I give you full disclosure of the terms written within that trust, okay, and I am definitive. For example, I could say the Michael H. Private Trust. What does that mean? Because it's just hanging there. It doesn't mean anything. But if I put, for this Michael H. Inter vivos Private Trust, written by the settler known as Michael, I've now got a proper full sentence structure. For this means it is relating to the Michael H. Private Trust. But if I just put the Michael H. Private Trust, it's a statement that doesn't say anything.
Right. It's not that's back to the beginning of the statement about the souls. The sanctuary is a school for the covenant of grace, protected by divine order, which is what we're in right now, structured as a foundation, is what we're doing right now, for the soul's continuity. And
yes,
but
when you put structured there, you put a past tense word. Mm-hmm. With this structure, I would write, because now with this structure is now anchored in the present.
That makes sense.
Okay. Changed. Okay. So
yeah. So what you did when you did that, and I'm not having to go at you, Michael. I'm just saying this is how trickery the language is, because the language is now, you've written a statement in past, future, and present tense, and I'm sat there, and I've landed from planet Mars, and I don't understand the English language, and I say, what's he writing? Because he's telling me about he's going to do it in the future, but then he's done it in the past, and now he wants to be in the present. Which one is it? Got
it. Very clear. Okay, we'll play with that a little bit later, because you and I kind of crafted that together. Okay, now let's go to this. Again, I'm wanting to get practicality and evidence and credibility here. This is where people go, well, I don't know anything about Darren. He's been 36 years. How many years have you been doing this? 36, is
36,
it?
yeah.
Well,
yeah, but I mean, some people could say I've had it 36 years. I could have it 1 year 36 times. Let you guys be the
right. They say, well, my attorney. They'll say, well, when I talk to my attorney, it's like, okay, so let's talk about your attorney's recommendation. Let's talk about the results that we've had. So we have a trust that a top barrister in the UK says, I can't write this trust. If I do, it's £70,000. Where our trusts are not £70,000, but it gives you credibility. Then you said to me a couple of weeks ago that the Swiss bank industry, I'll call them industry right now, the Swiss bankers, let's call them Swiss bank, international Swiss bankers, normally open up a Swiss bank account for $20 million.
No,
But
200,000.
Was it?
$200 million. $200 million.
$200 million. Sorry, not 20. $200 million. Thank you for that correction. However, when they read your trust and the person wanted to open up a checking account, what did they say to him?
They said you can have it for $1 million. You can deposit $1 million.
Right.
On the strength of the trust. On the strength of the trust.
So speak about
because
that.
in the trust, Michael, there's I've never actually counted them until the weekend, and I wasn't weakened, by the way. When I say the weekend, I'm just using that for you guys, right? Because weekend and weekdays were in a days, and but I did it. And there's 19 firewalls in that trust, 19 articles that there's 19 pieces of information that if I'm a trustee, I'm protecting that trust integrity in equity. So you're not going to get past it unless you can get past those 19 firewalls.
And the Swiss bankers knew that. They knew
Yeah,
the quality and the credibility of that trust. Yeah.
And the barrister knew that quality as well. He said his exact words were, "This is very eloquent, very well thought through, and I couldn't write the trust myself."
So for those people like, well, I don't know who you guys are, so forth and so on. You know, this is 36 years of credibility and so forth and so on. So let's move now into. So I think we've established that this is a legal, lawful trust. It works in the world. You know, it works in the legal system. You know, barristers, attorneys, they can recognize what it's about. It's enforceable. It takes a lot to penetrate. You know, it can be in any country, it can be in any language, and it could be really in any cosmology. So if you're a Navajo and you want us to write about articles in Navajo, we could write about Navajo. If you want them to be, you know, if you're from a Germanic tribe in Spain and you want to actually bring forth that tribe, we can write from that place. If you want to speak from Paleo Hebrew, we can speak from that place. So those are the different articles in the inter vivas trust. And so I just want to pause for a minute here, and before I go to the next part, which is there's 3 separate trusts. And then go ahead, Laura. If you do that quick, then I can move into this next part.
Yeah, I just this may not be quick, but I just wanted to put this as a seed of thought for Darren.
Okay.
And I've been thinking about this for a while. So a lot of ancient lore incorporates somebody who died and then was reborn and ascended into heaven. We all know that Yahusha, you know, J is like that type of mythology for the Christians. If you have a trust that is set up where you have a grantor, which is, let's say, the creator, the trustee, who is Yahusha HaMashiach, or the son who died for, the blood, and then you have like us as these beneficiaries, or a beneficiary title, is there something that is done where you can like allocate, like there's like responsibility, kind of like how they do with corporations, where it's like, oh, well, you can't take this land from me because it's technically owned by him and I am stewarding this land. So therefore, like, is there like some kind of system that is set up in that way? That
Absolutely. So that's a good question. So if principally, if I think I've got the right question, is that if you have like, say, your own, now you've got $10 in your wallet, yeah, and you're carrying that about, and then you put it on a sidewalk or a bench or something, and you just get distracted and somebody takes it from you, yeah. Now that could be classed as theft, but you abandoned the chattel in their system, okay? And so somebody then salvaged it. That's what they did with the placenta with the baby. So when we have a trust, what we're doing is I'm making an irrevocable settlement for you. You're the beneficial title holder. The legal title holder is Michael. He's a trustee. So Michael's got a problem and somebody wants to take money off him. He's got no beneficial entitlement to the trust, has he? Because he's just an administrator. That's all he is. Right? Now, if you and your, say, offspring and your family and the whole planet could be the potential beneficiaries of that trust. It doesn't have to be the whole planet, but it could be a lot of people, like your mum, your dad, your brother, your sister, your sons and your daughters, and so on and so on. So what that means then is, have you got in their system automatic possessory title? And you haven't, because you are potentially a beneficiary. So because you've got no automatic possessory title, nobody can make a claim against you as a beneficiary because you're potential. And that's how you... I had a conversation today with an ex-criminal barrister, and she was telling us about a high-profile case and a news corporation that you will all know, and it's in the public domain, so everybody wanted to Google the fact. And she said, "Oh, he got a bloody nose today. He's in his 90s, and basically he had 3 children. He's got 3 children, and he's put a trust together. And remember, this guy is minted. This guy is billionaire status." And she told me, she said, "Do you know about this case?" I said, "No, I don't really watch news, so I'm not that great, but indulge me." So she told me what it was one of his sons is right wing, like him. And he decided that after all these years, he wanted his eldest son, who was right wing, to get the bulk of the trust assets. Okay. And so it went to court and he lost because he made an irrevocable settlement. All right. For a third for the 3 children. Right. So the point of this story is, I said to this high-ranking barrister, "Well, he made a schoolboy error, didn't he?" And so she said, "Why's that?" She didn't know, yet she thought she knew a lot about trust. And I said, because if he'd have written the trust as discretionary and those were potential beneficiaries, then that would have been for the trustees to decide, and no intervention by the courts would have been able to intermeddle with it. Yeah? But because he put a third, it gives them a possessory title.
Excellent.
Wow.
So the moral of that story is that not all high-ranking attorneys know what they're doing.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's
Now you would think, Michael, wouldn't you, that guy that's a billionaire would have some pretty good legal minds.
yes. Yes.
And a bloke from a council estate in Yorkshire knew something that they didn't know. You wouldn't have ever scripted that, would you?
No, I wouldn't put that at, that would be number 18. Yeah, no, that would actually that is actually number 18. Will an attorney or barrister able to read and enforce it? So
Yeah,
okay,
but the
so
general public's perception is, oh, well, he's a billionaire. He must have some real good legal minds.
yeah,
And the criminal lawyer said to me, "Oh, well, we don't think like that." "What do you mean you don't think like that?" "Well, we just put it, give the possessory title." I said, "Well, you're leaving it open to claims then, aren't you?" "Yeah, but that's what the client wanted." I said, "Well, a good trust specialist will question what the client wanted and qualify that and clarify that is that what they wanted. Because sometimes, you see, they don't know what they want. Because when you say, well, do you want it being open to a claim by a third party? "No, I don't." "Well, then don't write it this way then. If you write it this way, it'll be open to claims." "Well, I don't want it that way then." There you go. You just have to ask the questions. What do we do in equity? We ask questions.
Yeah, or do you think you might want to change this? Like you might want to go 2/3 or more with one of these children at some point in time? Do you want to reserve the right to do that?
Well, the thing is that, but they don't ask those questions because they're attorney at law. They're
Right.
not in law, are they?
No, they aren't.
So
let
they're
me,
not responsible for that, are they? They'll say to
no,
you,
that's
Michael.
they're long gone at that point. And as most people know, you just put the trust in the drawer until the time. And that's not the way we participate with it. So let me just ask a few questions. A few people have joined, and a few people have just vacated. So I'm not sure. There's some people coming on the call. So I just want to say this. We're going to move now to the close of this. And I want you to understand that we have been working very earnestly now to move into a broader conversation, which is we want to make available to the Pure for Planet members, basically, to be able to be an affiliate for this aspect of the sanctuary. And the sanctuary is going to be made up actually of many of you. So, Laura's and Jules are going to teach, Julie are going to teach, different people are going to offer different things at different times. And so that's part of the aspect of the sanctuary. Where we're at right now is the foundational step, which is the sacred lore, sacred divine natural lore trust, and why that's important. So what we've been exploring is, would it be useful? Would it be something you'd be wanting to engage in if not only could you have your own trust, but also if you would like to be an affiliate of making these trusts available for people that you know and love. And number 2, 3 is, would you like to be someone who has an affiliate relationship with us to be able to have a stream of income, a substantial stream of income actually, with people in your life and people that you might want to bring into your life. I mean, there's so many different prospects for this conversation that would be really, really, really very rewarding, not only emotionally, spiritually, physically, psychologically, but financially. That's becoming available right now. And so this call is about providing an awareness that not only can you get involved with this in terms of understanding the trust and where it's coming from with 36 years of experience behind you, but we can actually start to help train you in be able to do what's called the basic trust as a stream of income and a stream of donation, rather, more than income, for your ministry, for your mission, as a part of including this in your ministry and your mission, because everything is donation based and ecclesiastic association based, private trust based. We're not a commerce organization. Pure for Planet's not commerce, and the this Sacred Trust of Remembrance Sanctuary is not commerce. We're ecclesiastic associations, unincorporated associations, so forth and so on, private trust. And so I'd like to just get some feedback at this point from people that are on the call. Is this something that you'd like to share with other people? Is this something that you'd like to, and if you don't want to give feedback on this call, you can contact me directly or contact somebody who brought you to this call, like Liddy or Laura or, Cheryl or someone. I just want to let you know this is available. And then I'd like to just close out with us explaining that we're offering 3 different types of trust. And so, Darren, if you could, and we're not going to talk about pricing because that'll be an individual conversation that you have with me directly as a person that wants your own trust and a person that might want to be an affiliate. But Darren, could you break down now the difference between the basic trust, the inter vivos trust, and the master trust, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. I'll not spend too long on it because you've been very patient so far. So I'll explain. So we operate, all of us, on people from different walks of life. Some people are extremely rich and some people are not rich. So the idea is that the first core of this, and when Michael talks about affiliates and things like that, the reason behind that, just to qualify that, is because I or Michael cannot go around 8 billion people. I think Michael sometimes thinks he can, but he can't, right? I'm joking there, Michael, by the way. Right, no, right. but we can. And the only way for us to leave a legacy is that the more people that they know about this, then the stronger it becomes. So therefore, if we then have an affiliate program where people then now can write their own trust, where we actually not that really too fussed about the commercial aspect of it, the income aspect of it, and Michael will tell you that because I'm not really that interested in that. We want to kind of give as much as we can to the affiliates. So, but the affiliates are going to have the same experience as we have, where they're going to find people that have got medium wealth, large wealth, and small wealth. So where do we start? Well, the first thing is to perfect that title. That's where it has to start, right from the beginning. So that's where the basic trust comes from. So the basic trust is for somebody that hasn't got a wide range of assets, very small assets in terms of value, but understand their sovereignty and want to get that legal title perfected. So that's where the entry-level trust would come, because at least now we're returning back to source. But it's not going to be strong enough to protect £1 million yacht, let's say, for example, or £1 million, real estate. So we've next got the inter vivos trust, which means in lifetime. That's what inter vivos means. And inter vivos one is the one with the 19 firewalls. So that is for folk that have got assets probably above $300,000 in the US, $325,000 in the UK, where they've got tangible assets that could be taken away by the cabal. Yeah. And so the inter vivos trust is a more robust trust at a pricing point because of the level of detail that is in it and all the surrounding documents that protect it. That's a more, if you like, complicated trust, if you want. It's not complicated, but there's more to it, okay? And then the last trust is what we call the master trust, which is operating for people that have got assets in all different jurisdictions. So you might have a property in Costa Rica, a property in Southern Ireland, a property in Spain, you've got assets in Switzerland, blah, blah, blah. You've got assets all over the place. And then you want a one place to fit all of those assets. That would be the master trust.
And the master trust, just to address something about that, which I find interesting, maybe inter vivos also, is the idea that the level of the basic, the first level is the intention and the sort of the intelligence behind it, but the assets occur at the second level. So can you talk about that for a second?
Sorry, what was that last bit? The second one about the assets at what level or something?
I don't know if it's the master trust or the inter vivos trust or both, but the first level is the private ecclesiastic association or the private intention. And then the intention is at the first level of the privacy, and the assets actually take place at the sub level, the secondary level.
Okay, so the first level, which is the initial level, is to get that legal title perfected and some small assets. So let's say you've got a car that's worth $20,000, and that's all you've got in the world, but you don't want somebody to take it off you. Right.
That's the basic trust.
The basic trust would be great because it'll perfect your title. So you're back to source in terms of the system, and you've got small assets that are protected.
And you have your assets protected. You have your last will and testament included, and you essentially have a private trust.
Well, I mean, you've already got a last will and testament in the trust, haven't you? Yes. So the answer is yes. Yeah. And then the inter vivos trust is for people that have got more than that. You know, they've got property, real estate. They've got, pensions, bonds, cars, investments.
Gold, silver.
Yeah, blah, blah, gold and silver and stuff like that. So effectively, they've got a bit more to protect. Well, you need those 19 firewalls, right, in that inter vivos trust to make sure that whatever you have is protected. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is in trust law is that we can protect through the inter vivos trust in that way only to a certain point of value. And then when we get a more complicated estate, such as people got properties all over the world, assets all over the world, then you need the master trust because we need to operate in different jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can do that with the sovereign inter vivos trust, but it's more clumsier. It's not as good. You'd know if you knew what I knew. You'd think, right, you know, you won't want to do that if you've got multifaceted assets all over the world. You just have the master trust. Yeah.
Right.
So what we try to do is develop something that fits everybody for their taste, their suit, and their pocket.
And this is under the Pure for Planet Global membership, because you're already privatized in our structure. So this is a private. This is a free talk. This free talk is another one of the videos. Now there are 3 videos underneath the Sacred Remembrance of Sacred Trust of Remembrance Sanctuary. This is the video I wanted to make that really kind of nails down what is the trust, and also give you a foundation. If you wanted to be an affiliate, you say, well, I don't know what to say. Okay, well then this is what you need to say. And it's not going to be a quick, I might break it up at some point in time soon, but in the meantime, it gives people a pretty good understanding, like, why would I want to have this trust? Why, you know, I've heard this about private trust. I don't really know. Well, you want to restore the title, number 1. Number 2 is all the principles that have been in what the legal system would say, protecting the assets, you know, the last will and testaments, that's included in all of these trusts. And so it's based on your level of assets and your net worth, which is the basic, versus the inter vivos, which is the master trust. So it isn't that you wouldn't have the tools. You'll have the tools. There's a training class that will be included in this. And you know, as any course, there's a fee for that. But we've built that to be very nicely so that you can work with that as a donation. And also that you, as you get your feet a little bit more wet, share more things and have more opportunities to share with people. There's also elements of this that are involving you actually learning how to do this and being trained and having a way to develop your own ministry, your own mission, and then help others develop their own ministry and own mission underneath Pure for Planet Global Mission as a private member. So if that's of interest to you, then you'll want to get back to me or get back to Liddy, and we can say, you know, and then of course we built into that as a part of that value. If you do become one of our affiliates, then we have some really interesting ways to help you get your own trust. So that's the ABCs at this point. There is a couple people I don't know on this call still. There's a Fitzroy and there's a Nancy Buchanan and some other people I just want to call out for a minute just to get some feedback. I don't know who Fitzroy is and I don't know who Nancy is. So if you can unmute just for a second to share with us how you got here, and did you get value out of this, and do you have any questions? So Nancy, that's to you, and Fitzroy, that's to you. It's like you're going to want to remain anonymous at this point, or you can't figure out how to unmute yourself, which I understand. Okay, no problem. So part of the people that would probably have funneled people onto this call is Liddy and Laura and some other folks. So I'd like to just get some feedback overall. I know we went long, but we went long to get footage and we went long to get content. So don't let that stress you, because you got a ton of value. So at this point, Cheryl, Laura, other folks, anybody want to comment, close this conversation out? Did you get value? Do you see possibilities? Are there people you might want to recommend? Are you interested in being an affiliate? Blah, blah, blah.
This is Cheryl, and much value out of it. And definitely, in my mind, I'm thinking I need the repetition so that I may be able to speak this language. And I know that comes in over time. So I'm very interested in the affiliate program.
Yeah, you know, you said something, Cheryl, that I've never heard before from you, and it kind of caught me that, you know, my people don't know this. And I thought, well, they can, and it's not a big investment for them at all. And it would be, you know, there's such a huge marketplace You see, there's so many people that are like-minded that don't understand about what we're talking about in terms of title. And we've designed this so that they can. And so, Laura's going to be providing educational curriculum regarding this whole conversation with Paleo Hebrew, who we are, what our relationship's about. Darren is taking on the mantle here. He and I and many, and actually I'm involved in a lot of the conversations about what is the sovereign law trust? Why would we want to take title back? And I'm hoping that other people will engage in the health and wellness aspect of this. And so someone's going to come on and, we'll start talking about commodities differently, banking and financing differently, so that we've been creating in the sanctuary our own jurisdictions and our own places to operate from that are within our sacred trust. And that's the intention. And then whoever wants to be a part of that, first of all, they have to be a Pray for Planet private member. And that's very easy. And second part is they probably have something to bring to the school, to the sanctuary, which is a piece that they're interested in personally. And so, like Seth, for example, has a big science background and technology background and cryptocurrency background. All of these things need to be done from the right reason and not as a party to a trust, but as a sovereign law trustee. So with that,
yes, I would just like to also say that this is so very important. Just the simple thought that nothing belongs to us and we were created by the creator and everything belongs to them, the creator. And that kind of dialogue empowers a person beyond one's imagination.
Yeah, to understand really what stewardship is. And once you understand that goes back to the Pure for Planet, like we're the trustees. Nobody else is the trustees. We're the trustees. But with the overlay, we never got a chance to be the trustees. We never got educated about that because right out of the gate, we were birthed down the canal and we were certified to the state. And, and our parents rented us back. And so this is, I believe this is a mind-blowing conversation for a lot of people and other people like, man, I've been looking for something like this. So, Laura, anything you want to say on the way out the door?
I've got a quick
Seth,
thing I wanted to include with what I mentioned earlier was that to encourage, everybody as well, that this works. When you put this out into the universe, so to say, it works. So every little bit that you're learning and that you're, applying this, you'll see actual, I don't want to say manifestations, but you'll see real changes in the world around you. And so we know that's happening in the spiritual because we approach the spiritual, those other realms. But I know when I did this, it was like a huge, you could almost explain it as a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So I felt it physically. Then all of a sudden doors start opening up. And as we progress from those basics to the advanced, just more and more of this reality will be in your favor because, like Michael said, what did you mention when you had said that it was something about the realm, or not the realm, well, basically my point is that these effects have greater effects than just what we see. Oh, you were talking about how you are a sold commodity and that is draining your life force, essentially. Yep. That's 100% true. And so by reclaiming certain aspects, you're energizing yourself.
Yeah, so let's make some distinctions on the way out the door here. First of all, it's sacred trust of remembrance. So it's important to put in place here that this is part of our divine birthright. This is not something that we have to ask for permission for. This is a remembering of our sacred trust of who, with who, the creator, the divine. And, this was our divine DNA from the beginning. This was where we were created from. This is where life was created from. So what we're doing is we're not asking for permission. We're remembering who we really are. And then on top of that, we're taking away the overlay, the very well-designed overlay. And I would say on the way out of this conversation, like, all the ways that evil is projected into the entertainment industry, and the dark and the blood and the da-da-da and the vampires, like, you have no idea. This is the engineer sitting next to you. This is the design and craftsman that has created an overlay that is so brilliant and so integrated into the very design of humanity that you have to understand frequency, energy, and vibration is actually being manipulated. That's how deep and how brilliant we're working with as far as these principalities. So, it's really, really important that we understand that the education that we come from, the science and religion that we come from, was given to us to think from. And what we're doing is saying, wait a minute, let's go back to the original craft, the original design. Like, how could you even explain to someone that their birth date is taking them out of frequency with their connection to source? I mean, like, where do we have that conversation? Not normally, very easily. So this is the conversation. We're remembering the original information, remembering the original design, remembering the original connection with source and the divine relationship. And that's what's important. Everybody has this inside of them. It's in our cells, it's in our tissues, it's in our blood, it's in our water. It's just that we have, and everything is being designed to remove it from our blood, from our water. That there'll be a separate or an overlay, a new biochemical being.
And in our brain, in our bones, as somebody conveniently told me the other day, which was very grateful.
Yeah,
that it's in our bones.
Yeah, and this is Laura's piece. This Laura's going to be talking about, this is the First Nation information. This is why this First Nation information is being genocide, is because they understood the power of this relationship was part of the design. Now, you'd have to understand that when you got Roundup in the world, they understand. They don't just put Roundup to kill weeds. They do that because it has a demonstrative effect on the blood-brain barrier and what's going on with our whole operating system. So we have to understand this is not just a bunch of people getting together having some great ideas. We actually have an anointing at this point to move forward and say, listen, this is not your place. We're the trustees here. We have a responsibility, and you've tricked us. You've overlaid us. You've treated us like cattle and commodities. And you know what? That's over with now. We're reclaiming who we are. We're empowering each other. And we're saying, listen, this is not that difficult. We just have to call it forth. And then we have to stand in it without fear, without doubt, without insecurity, and saying, listen, it's in the language, it's in the science, it's in the medicine, it's in the banking, it's in the food. It's a big thing. And you're right. I do feel like 8 billion people, I'm responsible for 8 billion people. But the bottom line is, I feel like the people that are gathering are going, listen, I see what you're talking about. It's making sense to me. Let me start correcting my own vibration. If you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in sound bowls and this and that and traveling to Bali and all these different places, you might want to just start with your original title. You might just want to start at the beginning of how you were born and what happened at birth. It's not conspiracy, it's design. Anybody else? Okay, thank you for your time today. Get back to the person that put you on this call. We're going to have another talk next week. We may be having talks from Laura soon, and we're moving into the next level of curriculum. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Seth. Thank you for your contribution, as always, and look forward to talking with you soon. Bye for now.
Thank
Take
all
care,
of you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Darren and all, and Laura.